Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We will begin with the last technical session of this training today. The next speaker for our training program is Professor Dr. Naveed Muhammad Khan. Dr. Naveed Khan is a professor and head of virology and parasitology, Clinical Sciences College of Medicine, University of Sharjah, UAE. His specialization is in medical molecular biology and applied medical microbiology. He has, under his supervision, 15 PhD students have completed their work, and more than 100 undergrad students have completed their research. To his credit, he has more than 150 research publications. And the topic of his talk today is challenges and opportunities in medical research in Sharjah. With this, over to you, Professor Dr. Naveed. Professor Naveed, can you hear us? Hello, Dr. Naveed, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
So should I introduce you again, or we are okay to go with your presentation?
Yeah, I'm good to go.
Okay, right. So please, open to you.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you very much. Let me first of all thank the organizer for the very kind invitation. It's good to be here and sharing our experience of working in this country. And this is a wonderful forum. So I really appreciate the organization and participation of so many individuals. I'll be telling you about what kind of research challenges that we are facing, especially when we talk about medical research and clinical research. This is an important slide to me personally. I strongly believe in the Sustainable Development Goals adopted by the UN. And UAE, also Pakistan and many other countries, they are key member of that. And according to these goals, the medical education, good health, well-being is one of the key areas that we need to focus on, among other important areas such as poverty, zero hunger, quality education, and many other goals which we need to adopt and achieve by 2030. So I think this is important to keep things in perspective, because we cannot just grow or make progress in one discipline. We have to look at the broader picture to make sure that everything goes hand in hand. So that's important. I just wanted to highlight that. And, it is important also to realize that what are the standards, where are we in this sustainable development goals, which also are part of the medical research and clinical research in our countries. So this is the progress. This is the SDG Global Index. And what you see is the top 10 countries. And again, it is unfortunate that among the OIC countries that we are not there. So, we really need to work hard to ensure that we also become one of the top nations and represented well in both clinical research, medical research, and among other things. So this is important. So question is that where are we if we are not in the top 10? There are more than 200 countries in the world. They're all trying to achieve the sustainable development. And these are the top 10, but where are we as as a country, as a nation. So I'm going to focus only on UAE, and many of the challenges that we are facing, they are not really limited to UAE. They're also in other Muslim countries as well. What I'm going to highlight is the situation in Sharjah in particular, but some of those opportunities, some of those challenges, they are also represented in the other parts of UAE as well, in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Al Ain, and so on. So UAE as a whole, we were ranked 65 in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals in 2019. And unfortunately, we have dropped down to 71 in the global ranking. Uh, Saudi Arabia is 97, and among other countries. So it's nice to see some countries are doing very well. I believe Malaysia is 65 or so. So Iran is 59. Some countries are doing very well, and we are doing okay. But it gives us the opportunity to focus our effort, our resources, to try to do better. That's the so how can we do better? There is a lot of focus, especially in Sharjah, to do clinical research. So there's, because of COVID-19, we all know there's renewed energy, enthusiasm to promote clinical research. That's supposed to be the answer to many of the problems. There is energy, there's enthusiasm, there's the sharing of resources, and there are initiatives by the Sharjah government to try to establish, try to promote the clinical research. So this is picture shows you the ruler of Sharjah who's establishing Sharjah Oasis of Technology and Innovation. This is a project very close to his heart, and he's trying to establish this project with the investment of $500 million US. So which is a very significant amount, especially when you talk about research and clinical sciences and medical sciences. So even though that we do lack, for example, a clinical trials unit per se, what I'm pleased to see is that there is interest, there is acceptance, wide acceptance that we ought to do more. And the only way to prove, in my view, is that when governments they invest resources, they invest funding for that purpose. So we are part of being the University of Sharjah, this Sharjah Oasis of Technology and Innovation, also known as SOTI. This will be run and operated by the University of Sharjah. It's a multi-million dollar investment. And the sole purpose is that we ought to be doing more research, be that in the field of space sciences, be that in the field of clinical sciences, and hopefully we will be working with many countries within the OIC, be that Pakistan or Iran or Saudi Arabia and so on, to try to promote and share resources and try to take advantage of the many wonderful expertise that we have available in other nations. So the purpose of this SOTI, this forum, is to develop a hub, a global hub to do space science research. UAE is very keen on space sciences. You must have seen in the news and the media that there are these initiatives to go to the moon or to Mars mission and so on. But at the same time, it's not limited to that. So the initiatives are to also expand that into the medical sciences as well as the clinical sciences. So that's very important. And I hope that I see many of you participating in these initiatives, and we will be counting on many faculty, many members within the OIC to help us, to support us, to play an active role. So there will be a lot of opportunities in these areas. Okay, so what is the present situation in Sharjah? I just put, as I mentioned, I'm going to just highlight a few opportunities and some challenges as well. And they're not only, as I said, limited to Sharjah, they are applicable to the broader region as well, to many other OIC countries, or at least within the UAE, very much. So Sharjah, it has two main universities. So it has University of Sharjah with a medical college, It's one of the best medical college in the region, and so we're very proud to have that. So it's very well established, and as you can imagine, that with the medical college, you also have a university hospital. So that gives us um, uh, the opportunity to carry out or to set up a clinical trials, to carry out these clinical research, and to take advantage of that. And secondly, we have American University of Sharjah. It doesn't have a medical college, but we have faculty members who do clinical research, medical research. So we have two main universities. So my focus, because of the presence of a medical college at the University of Sharjah, together with a university state-of-the-art hospital, my focus will be on the University of Sharjah and how it can contribute to the broader mission of the government. So both the universities, be that University of Sharjah or American University of Sharjah, both the universities, they're very, very young. They're 20 years old only. So you can imagine that, there's a long way to go compared to many other universities in other countries and other regions. But we do have a visionary leadership. That's very, very important. And again, it has one of the best medical schools, access to a state-of-the-art hospital, a very strong desire to have a global presence. So, the UNESCO really, really keen in terms of investing. When we're talking about investment, we are looking at, billions of dollars, not small money. So the idea is that the vision of the ruler is that we really need to have the university among the top 100 university in the world globally. So global presence is a strong desire by the university leadership, by the state leadership as well. And most importantly, you cannot do clinical research, you cannot do medical research if you don't have money. As simple as that. So it is very important that the resources are available to carry out those kind of studies, because these are expensive domains, especially running a clinical trials unit or carrying out medical research is costly. So there is that recognition. So we do have that opportunity uh, within the University of Sharjah and within the leadership to actually invest in this field. Okay, so carrying on, the good thing about being in Sharjah or within the UAE is that it has become a global hub, as we all know. So we have the diseases of the developing countries as well as the developed countries. So as you all know very well that Dubai or Sharjah, they're next to each other, and there's a large population from expat from different countries, from developing countries as well as developed nations. So it's a good hub, a good representative to have diseases, access to those patients with diseases from developing countries as well as developed countries. Research intensive culture. So the measurable outcome for faculty members in the university is drives this research intensity. So everybody is judged based on the publication, based on grants, and so on. So that culture is there, which is very, very important, which is very healthy. Because of the investment, one can create good lab facilities, a lot of equipment, resources, which is always important. We have very strong basic science research. Because of lesser ethical issues in conducting basic sciences, it was easier for the university, at least at the beginning of its life, with only 20 years so far, that it was easier to create that culture of basic science, to set up those facilities, to set up those labs, and set up that, purchase that equipment, and basically spending the resources to be able to establish these facilities to carry out good quality research. And experienced investigators. UAE has been very, very fortunate to be able to bring in experts from all over the world. Because of the incentives given to the researchers and because of the facilities being offered to researchers. So we do have access to good experienced investigators in at least in the basic science research. And we are starting to carry out some of the clinical research. There's good funding, both internal, much of the funding that comes to us is from the internal sources, by the university itself, and also there are good external funding sources available within the UAE and also within Sharjah. And there's research priority areas because the funding comes from the local agencies. So nationally, these have to be linked to the national needs as well. So research priority areas are linked. So but again, as I mentioned, that because it's a global hub, so many of those challenges and opportunities are relevant to other nations as well. So, okay, coming to the challenges. To my surprise, I only came here just a year ago. To my surprise, there is no Medical Research Council or NIH. So we do within the UAE, there is good medical research going on, but there is no clinical trials unit dedicated facility, the one that I'm familiar with, for example, the one which is at the University of Karachi. So there is no medical research council or the centralized unit that can allow you to carry out such trials or to do this incentivize research. So there is fragmented effort. So each university is playing its own role, carrying out such research, but there's no centralized unit or agency that can monitor the situation. So that's one of the weaknesses that I see that exists, where we are hoping that we can work with many countries within the OIC to take advantage of that. Clinical research, so basic science researchers, we do have critical mass for that, but for clinical researchers, we don't, and that's where we hope to build in the future. Uh, High turnover of research active faculty leading to inability to complete projects. This is very, very important because many people who come here, unfortunately, because of family reasons or cultural differences or other reasons, or sometimes just the climate itself, sometimes they're unable to stay. So the attrition rate of faculty turnover is quite high. And that makes it difficult to then complete projects, and which is one of the challenges that I feel exist in Sharjah as well as in the UAE. There's no tradition of research. I think that's true for many other countries as well within the OIC, that hospital and staff, there's little tradition of research. So unless they're involved, unless patients approve of taking part in such kind of research, because you do need specimen, you need to have that opportunity. You need to engage the public somehow, and that culture is missing because people get afraid sometimes. People are not, or there may not be incentive sometimes for people to take part. So that culture is missing. So hopefully, with time, and COVID has been, in a way, has really highlighted that even a common person who may not be taking advantage of or taking part in medical research, but they have to be, they have become aware of the importance of research. A lack of incentives for clinical research. So the problem is, like many other countries that I've worked in, the measurable outcome is publications, and clinical research takes time. So doing a basic science research is can be quick, it can be fast. You can get few publications quickly, but for clinical research, to recruit patients, to recruit public, to recruit people, and then get all the ethical approval and to carry out expensive research, it takes time. So if the measurable outcome in many countries is publication, that suggests that it will be for faculty members, it will be difficult to get engaged in clinical research. So we ought to look at those measurable outcomes differently for clinical faculty versus faculty who are engaged in basic science research. So that's a problem that I see within the UAE, that measurable outcome is still publications, is still patents, or winning grants, but clinical research may not allow you that output, which will hinder many of the clinical researchers to engage in such activities. The big pharma is more or less is not really a player. So then, of course, much of the funding for clinical research has to come from big pharma. And if they don't, if there's no infrastructure or limited infrastructure, then naturally big pharma may not be taking part in such research. Okay, there's as I mentioned, there's fragmented clinical research going on, but there's no dedicated facility of a clinical research trials unit as we are familiar with, and that needs to be available. Lack of a central plan. And again, this goes back to having a council like Medical Research Council in the UK or NIH in the US or even in Pakistan. So we need to have that central plan. And if the effort is mostly done by universities individually, then it's difficult to achieve a bigger objective. Okay, so again, needless to say that clinical research is lack of infrastructure means there will be limited incentives, there's limited opportunities for faculty to engage in clinical research. Databases are inadequate or inaccessible. So much of the information, be that from cardiovascular disease point of view, like CDC, in the US, you go on the CDC website and you can get any kind of information. But that information generally is not available easily regionally here at least. So that again hinders the opportunity for us to understand the situation. And if we understand, if we engage public, if we understand the problem, then faculty may get motivated to get engaged in such opportunities. Basic and clinical research cycle is weak. So as I said, that we do good basic science research, but the clinical cycle is weak because of the opportunity sometimes, and because of the awareness, or because of the incentives, and because of the measurable outcomes that we may not have. Disease-related support is limited, so we may not be able to focus on a particular problem. This is not true for things like cancer or cardiovascular problem. For other diseases which may be rampant in many of the countries, that the support may be limited. And for mega projects, again, the effort is fragmented, which means that we don't have the opportunity to go for multi-million dollar projects. Sometimes you do need to have that opportunities, and those opportunities don't exist because of the lack of centralized council or a unit that can afford such mega projects to carry out multinational or multi-state level of clinical research. Okay. Links with global centers exist. So there's a lot of MOUs, like many of the universities, and we have that too within the UAE, that there's a lot of MOUs, MOAs that exist on paper. And so there are good links. And so, we have MOUs with Harvard or Cambridge or Oxford, like many of the universities. But in reality, this needs to be strengthened. With those measurable outcomes may be lacking, and that's something that we really need to focus on, to take advantage of those global centers. And in part, mostly because everything is finance driven sometimes. So there is this lack of regional commitment. So many of those big pharma or big universities or big nations, when they come in, generally there has to be there is a lack of regional commitment, and that's something that we need to strengthen in the coming years. Medicine for profit is unlikely to encourage research. So, if every player, from the hospital point of view, from the patient point of view, from the physician point of view, to the pharma, to global university, if it's for profit only, then it becomes difficult to carry out research which has a different purpose. Need to develop physician scientist program. We do have excellent medicine program, but there's a shortage of physician scientist program. We need to encourage our physicians, and that opportunity exists within Sharjah. And hopefully, if we can incentivize, so those graduates that we're producing, those physicians that we're producing within the medical college, if we can somehow channel them, well, not all of them, but at least less than 10% of them, into research, so that will solve some of the problems that we are facing. Because what we notice is that many of the faculty members who do PhDs, they generally end up focusing only on basic research, and then the physician scientists, they generally tend to stay focused on the clinical research. So we do need to bring in relevant stakeholders to take advantage or to carry out that clinical research mission of the state. Okay, so excellent research means that there's a need of excellent patient care and education. And again, that's where the physician scientists are very important. They can play a key role if we can somehow incentivize such or produce such graduate program which can allow them to come to enroll for those postgraduate research program to then carry out such research and be engaged. So this has been the present research focus until last year for the university, and this is true for many of the university because of the measurable outcome. If my performance is measured based on publications, based on seminars, based on presentation or technical expertise, then that's the only thing I'll stay focused on. And what we require is the faculty members and other researchers to carry this out. And that's, to me, is a problem because all the knowledge that we're producing, that's generally wasted. Not always, but in many times that is not taken up. In my view, a value of the university is not determined by its physical assets, but its intellectual assets. And that's where university has started to go into the direction of impactful research or translational research, and that's has to be somehow brought into the measurable outcome for faculty performance if we expect them to do this meaningful, impactful research. Unless we make that into a measurable outcome criteria of their performance, they're not going to get too engaged. So if you're only looking at the number of publication, it's unlikely that we can push them in that direction. So, a challenge for us has been our inability to capture knowledge and transfer to application, like many other universities, and that's again is the opportunity as well. So, we came up with this. So, what do we know from research discovery into practice? So, we started looking at performance measures for many of the other universities. So, we looked at Harvard University, University of Edinburgh, and again, this is a very, very typical performance measure which are being used by other universities. Again, clinical research and the medical research focus is still, I don't see it. So a number of technologies or patents or license or royalties or number of companies formed, they're all well and good. But it's the impactful research, especially the clinical trials, that performance measure has to be highlighted. Somehow that has to be taken into account when we're measuring performance of the faculty member, and that remains a challenge. So what we came up with within the medical college is the four-phase strategy that how can we promote. I think it's unfortunate in my personal view is that we keep expecting faculty member to do all those things, to write grants and to write papers and to publish them, and then also to get patents and companies and all that. And then we keep asking them to do more in terms of impactful research. And I think we need to be aware that, the way that we were not trained from an MBA point of view, from a business model point of view. So different elements will require different kind of expertise. And that's why we need to bring in other experts into the equation as well, if we are to achieve impactful research in the area of clinical sciences. So we divided the strategy into four phases. So phase one, everybody is doing very well, all universities. Phase two, identification of knowledge. That's where we need to have business consultants. Faculty, when I ask them, they feel that whatever they're doing is the most important thing in the world. And that's going to change the world. So we do need to bring in business consultants who understand the financial aspect or the applied part of our research. We do need to highlight those and so identify that. And knowledge management, this is again is a huge field. In my view, it is unreasonable to expect faculty members to do all these things. So it is reasonable for them to, come up with idea, do research, and write a paper or a grant and so on. But then, given the knowledge to other relevant stakeholders to take it forward, and that's where it's important to bring in research coordinators or officers or health professionals or business manager. It's only different teams who can then work together to be able to solve the problem that we're having, which is that we do a lot of good quality research, but then discovery has to somehow be impactful, and that's where we need different skill set to ensure that it happens. So that's the strategy that at the moment we're adopting within the medical college, and hopefully we're hopeful by bringing in experts from other relevant field, we can make a difference. I covered that just very quickly about the University of Sharjah. Again, this is our main campus. It is one of the top 250 young universities in the world according to THE ranking. It is also the top 250 international universities in Asia. It is ranked third in the UAE according to THE ranking, and is ranked fourth in the UAE according to QS ranking, and it's number one in ranking in the UAE as per Green Metric World University Ranking. So, we're doing fairly well. But in terms of, again, the criteria is the same, the patents, publications, student faculty ratio, and so on. So we need to change that when we're thinking about clinical research. Again, briefly about the university. So the mission is really to become a research-led university. We have about 17,000 students. There are 111 programs. We have just over 600 faculty members. We're ranked number 3 in the UAE. There are 13 colleges, and medical college is one of them. We have 47 departments and 3 research institutes and 54 research groups and more than 100 nationalities. So really try to make it very diverse. So we bring in different ideas, and then hopefully that can, um, make take it forward. Research institute, they are very important to the university, and university has been investing very, very heavily in the promotion of research. So far, we have done very well in the basic science research, and it's the clinical part, which is something we ought to take advantage from other nations. So for the purpose of today's presentation, so Research Institute of Medical and Health Sciences, so we have 3 research centers, 19 research groups, and each research group have their own postdocs and RAs and so on. So each group is supported by the university, which is important. It becomes sustainable, it becomes a viable research group. And they have their own PhD student fully funded, and on master student fully funded, and admin support, and lab assistant. So it makes the research group very viable in the long term, very sustainable. So there's no so much pressure of that it has to sustain itself in terms of salary and all that. So this is very important, and I'm hopeful that that there will be opportunities for many people who are attending these sessions to take advantage and be part of these teams. And the research priority areas, I don't want to go into detail. It's natural that we, like many other countries, we focus on drug discovery to cancer biology to diabetes, all these problems which are we are facing as a nation within the UAE, as well as many other countries. The problems are the same. And we have very good core facilities, from animal facility to NMR to genomics to the immunology research and tissue biobanking. We have started drug design, proteomics, metabolomics core facilities. So hopefully some members, can look into this, and there will be these opportunities for some other members to get engaged or be part of them. Okay, I'm not sure whether I have time, but I may have run out of time. I was hoping to talk a little bit about my own research, but I presume that my time is finished. If you want, I can stop here, or I can just tell you very briefly about my own research.
So I think you can have 5 more minutes, and if you want to touch further part of your presentation.
Okay, right. Okay, thank you so much for allowing another 5 minutes. My own research is focused on terror cells. Originally I'm from Pakistan. I'm allowed to use this word, war on terror cell, and this slide really represents the not just the COVID-19. That's a huge burden, but in addition to COVID-19, we have other. These are just a list of top 10 infectious diseases that's killing 17 million people every single year, despite the fact that we have antibiotics and antimicrobials and we have made all the advances. Still every year 17 million people are dying due to these infections. So this is in addition to people who are dying because of COVID-19. And then there are zoonotic infections. I apologize to show this slide. My son always tells me to include this in any presentation. But the message here is that there are zoonotic infection, and we also need to be aware of that as well. This is my family. When we had kids, this is in the front. This is Salahuddin, this is Muhammad, this is Iman, this is my wife Rakaya. And when we had our kids, a lot of colleagues, they gave us these books to germ-proof our kids, and they told us you really need to make sure that your hands are clean before you touch your kids, and you need to make sure that the milk you give them that is clean, is hygienic, and all that. And that's where we came up with this question: that what about other species? What about things like cockroaches? We are protecting our children, we are protecting our species so much, and we're coming up with new antibacterial soap every time we go to a market. In Karachi, you see that there are new antibacterial soap, there's new Dettol. But that begs the question that what about these other species like cockroaches? How do they survive? They do not have access to those kind of antiseptic measures that we do, but they are able to thrive in unhygienic conditions. They're able to live very happily in unhygienic conditions. And that's precisely the research focus of our group, that they must have some molecules, some mechanism in them which are protecting them. So it doesn't matter how many insect repellents, we see them in the market, that we throw at them, and yet they're able to thrive in the very condition that we live in. And so, despite the fact that they are one of the most hated species on this planet, they're one of the hardiest insects. They can live without food, without air, without water. They can tolerate the radiation that can kill a human being. They can tolerate 15 times higher level of radiation without being killed. And we all know that in the market, when we buy these insect repellents, they're hopeless against things like cockroaches or mosquitoes and so on. And they've been here for more than 350 million years. It ought to beg the question that how long ago we came to this planet. According to the fossil record, we've been here for 50 to 100,000 years, which is nothing. And these species have been living on this planet for millions of years. So how do they do that? How are they able to adapt and evolve while we came here so recently, and we have brought this planet on its knees with all the made it so unsustainable? So what we need to remember is, in a nutshell, and that's the purpose of our research focus, has been that we are just one species, Homo sapiens, among millions of other species who have been inhabiting this planet very successfully through evolution, through adaptation. And we ought to learn from other species how do they do that, and then bring and emulate those practices, learn from those mechanisms, and try to adopt them. Then hopefully, then we can have sustainable development for our species as well. So just very quickly, so we have basically identified some very powerful molecules in these some of these species, and we work closely on this with Professor Raza Shah as well, and try to make nano formulation and so on to try to bring to a pharmacy. And this work has been highlighting in Science News and New Scientist and BBC. They always come to film that how do we work on what kind of molecule these insects are producing. So our hope is for our research group is that the cockroaches will finally make their way into the affection of the human race. So when you see them anywhere, don't step on them. Please bring them to us. We can make some use out of them. That's important. So that's the purpose of our research, that we're trying to retrieve these mechanisms, these molecules from such species like cockroaches, to bring to patient care, and then bring to the benefit of the human race. And not limiting just to cockroaches, just to, for one final slide, we're also looking at other species like crocodile. As some of you know very well, that crocodile, they eat rotten meat, yet they do not get infected. My mother has, when she is cooking chicken, she has to put so much curry and cook it to death. But these species, they can eat raw meat, which is yellowish, which is gooey, which is rotten, and yet they thrive under these conditions. Or snakes, they eat germ-infested rats, and yet they are not affected. They thrive on those conditions, and many other species. So in a nutshell, so we're working on, you can imagine the kind of species that exist with us and around us, be that on land animals or be that in marine environment. like beach of Karachi, for example. Maybe we ought to look at those vertebrates and invertebrates and find out that how do they cope with heavy metals, and how do they cope with the unhygienic pollutants, and how do they cope with the crocodiles are always in the sun, sunbathing, and we have to put all the sun creams and all that. So how do other species have been able to live on this planet for millions of years very, very successfully, and while we are having so much trouble and so much difficulty in adapting and evolving? So we ought to learn those mechanisms, isolate those molecules, and then be able to use them for the benefit of the human race. Okay, I'll stop here. This is just a very quickly, this couple of slides just to show you this. We go to crocodile farms and then try to show, isolate, we dissect them, we bring them to our lab, and then isolate these molecules from them, and then use them for, and then pull out these molecules. This crocodile team Dundee. And we're also building capacity. We're also engaging our younger generation to be engaged in this research. And our hope is that finally we can bring this. So this again, working with another colleague in Pakistan. So looking at cobra, what kind of molecules, what are the mechanisms which are being used by these species. So again, very similar kind of research. I apologize for rushing it. I know that I'm already run out of time. I just wanted to highlight. Just one last point I want to make is that recently we also got interested in the gut bacteria. So far our work was focused on the immune system. The immune system is producing some molecule, peptides or antibodies and whatever, which are defending us against these infectious agents. But now we are focusing also on the gut bacteria. So gut bacteria of cockroaches, or gut bacteria of crocodile, or gut bacteria of snakes. Maybe they also release some molecule that we need to take out. And then they are the one responsible for those anti-infective, anti-carcinogenic property that we see. So there are a lot of opportunities in this area of research, and hopefully that we can collaborate with many colleagues who are attending this session to bring these findings to a closure, to a pharmacy. So these are our collaborators. Without that, none of this will be possible. And I'm really thankful for them to take part in this research. And of course, we cannot do anything without these animals who have sacrificed their life for our research. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Naveed Khan. With this, we will move on to our next speaker, Dr. Saifur Rahman Khattak. Dr. Saifur Rahman Khattak is Director, Central Drug Testing Laboratory, DRAB, Karachi. And a topic of his talk today is collaboration of OIC countries for strengthening quality control of therapeutic goods. Over to you, Dr. Saifur Rahman. Assalamu alaikum. Dr. Saifur Rahman, can you hear us?
His microphone is muted, so unmute.
Team at, okay, yes. Fine.
Now it is.
Dr. Saifur Rahman, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very good afternoon to all of you. Hope all are doing well. May Allah subhanahu keep us all well. First of all, I really appreciate the efforts of organizers who has organized this seminar to discuss scientific areas of mutual interest among the OIC member countries. The seminar and its expected outcomes are highly significant for our development, even existence, at this crucial time of COVID-19 pandemic and post-COVID arena. I really feel honored to be part of this August gathering. Since morning, we are seeing and hearing very thoughtful and wonderful deliberations from our colleagues. This is a light presentation from my side. May not contain, very dense and deep scientific studies, but some considerations, simple considerations, how to move forward, what we made, earlier, what were our commitments, where we are, and where we should be. So my presentation, it is titled Collaboration of OIC Countries for Strengthening Quality Control of Therapeutic Goods. That encircles the health goals of the OIC 2016 to 2025 Program of Action, the visible progress on the action plan, an area of establishing OIC member countries cooperation council for therapeutic goods, the opportunities of collaboration in quality control activities, and finally, the commitment of National Quality Control Laboratories of Pakistan to perform their role in the collaboration programs. So, starting from the first slide, that is the OIC 2025 Program of Action. That was the implementation plan, which was designed in 2016 to 2025 to reach to the goals. So, in the table, we can see some of the goals, specifically the goals related to the health. So in the first column, there are some goals. The second column carries the programs and activities. The third column is for implementing partners. And the final one is for the timelines. So I will go through some of these goals. So the first goal for the health in 2025 Program of Action was ensure healthy lives, improve social determinants of health, and promote well-being for all at all ages through equitable access of healthcare. Under these goals, because this is a set of goals, so we have the big programs and activities designed. The first one was enhancing free access to primary healthcare services to pave the way to universal healthcare coverage. The second program or activities which were designed under these goals were the streamlining operational policies, strategies, and action plans of the member states. And the timelines for these programs and activities were basically 2016 to 2025. Now coming toward the third program of action under this goal, that is to establish a continuing medical education program at all levels of the healthcare system with a special focus on primary healthcare. The fourth one, facilitating knowledge exchange and the co-production of new knowledge among member countries through joint capacity building programs. So these were the action plans and the programs designed under these goals. The second main set of goals were enhance cooperation in eradicating and containing major communicable diseases, collaborate on vaccine production, and where necessary, utilize relevant centers of excellence. Under these goals, the programs were supporting member countries to design policies and programs for universal health coverage by providing policy analysis and advice, improving policy tools and awareness programs to enhance public awareness about the critical benefits of the immunization among infants and women at childbearing age, establishing capacity building network among the communicable disease control and prevention centers and institutions in the member countries with a view to sharing, transferring, and exchange of knowledge and expertise. The next program under this goal was supporting member states to develop system for early detection and control of risk factors of non-communicable diseases and mental, neurological, and substance use disorders. The fifth program under this goal, supporting member states to develop, improve a multi-sectoral approach for effective control of risk factors of non-communicable diseases. It is physical inactivity, unhealthy eating habits, tobacco, etc. And the sixth program under this goal was basically the enhancing support to member states for polio eradication program. The third set of goal under the health goals was enhanced cooperation among the member states and international partners for establishment of strategies regarding human resource management and financial aspects of the strategic health programs of action. And the programs designed under this objective or goals were educating budgetary facilitation for health sector and establish an accountability mechanism to ensure transparent and efficient use of these funds. Facilitating exchanges of knowledge and best practices in the development of payment scheme for universal health care coverage, benefiting from the expertise of international partners to build health infrastructure in member countries, etc. So these were basically the goals in the action plan. Totally the programs against these goals, which were framed. So to know about any visible progress on the action plan, what we planned and where we are, let me present before you the resolution on health adopted to the 47th session of the Foreign Minister Health in Niamey, Republic of Niger, from 27th to 28th November 2020, which are mostly probably the most current updates on the action plan. So these are the resolutions, and you will be yourself deciding and analyzing how much we have traveled and what we have achieved. No doubt a lot we have done and a lot we have achieved, but many things are left for to be improved in the near future, especially in this arena of COVID-19 and then the arena of post-COVID-19. So I'm just mentioning some of the resolutions which will clear for you, our journey towards the fulfillment of these goals. Welcoming the convening of the 6th annual meetings of the Islamic Advisory Eradication IEG in Cairo on 4th September 2019. This was one of the activity which was welcomed, in these resolutions. The second welcome was for the successful session of the Islamic Conference of Health Ministers, including those adopted by the 7th ICTM Islamic countries health ministers held on 15-17 December 2019 in Dubai. Again, welcoming to the extension of the practical arrangement agreement signed between IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, and the area of comprehensive cancer control in the common member states. and then taking note of holding of the brainstorming workshop on the operational of the OIC medical course on 17/18/2019 at Sheikh in Ankara, Turkey, recognizing the progress made by Indonesia to establish the centers of excellence for vaccine and biotechnology products, appreciating the government of Indonesia for organizing a workshop for the OIC states on cold chain management in Bandung, Indonesia, 1st and 2nd October 2019, commending the government of Malaysia for hosting a training program in vaccine lot release on 21-23 October 2019 in Malaysia. And then also commending the role of the relevant OIC institution, especially Islamic Development Bank, ISCO, and carrying out the programs and activities that advance the OIC agenda and health, noting with appreciation the ongoing cooperation in the field of health between the international partners, including the World Health Organization, United Nations Fund, United Nations Population Fund, and other, international bodies. Appreciate the support by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for international efforts on health systems and increase readiness to control epidemics and outbreak through application of the international health regulations and effort to control antibacterial resistance. Welcomes the launch of Women Cancer Partnership Initiative between Islamic Development Bank. Next. And take note of the ongoing collaboration between the members of the vaccine manufacturing groups and encourages closer cooperation in all aspects of vaccine manufacture for the promotion of self-reliance in supply and production of affordable vaccine. We appreciate the efforts being made for effective functioning of the OIC upon the member countries upon General Secretary to recognize the periodic training session for the focal member states in OIC institution in cooperation with SRIC to ensure that the operations are taken on at earliest. And also to underline the importance of the addressing the global strategies of medicine and vaccine that OIC member states lag far behind in the domain of vaccine production. And yes, we said with the constant outbreaks in a high prevalence of various diseases that have been spread elsewhere, emphasizes the need to regulatory exchange information and calls for carrying out research on the prevalence and treatment of respiratory diseases, express concern at the rising prevalence of non-communicable diseases, cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, cancer, etc. Take note with concern of the increasing cancer burden and limiting access to radiotherapy and related cancer services among member states. Next. So these were basically some glimpses of the resolutions from which we can understand or we can comprehend, how we have made the journey and where we are. I think still we have to work very hard to improve all the areas, and we are basically mentioning the same area which were designed for progress in 2016 and in 2020. If we can see, I think we should improve a lot, and there is a lot of need to be improved. So a number of speakers from since morning, including my colleague Dr. Abdul Rashid, is already floated the idea of establishing joint regulatory body and
खटक साहब आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही। सफरमा खट्टर साहब मेरी आवाज आ रही है, आपकी आवाज हम तक नहीं पहुंच रही। हाँ जी।
I think he has disconnected. So I think meanwhile we can take questions for Dr. Naveed Khan, who was the earlier speaker. So we have questions for Dr. Naveed Khan. Yes, sir.
Professor Dr. Naveed Khan, are you listening to me?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much. It was an excellent presentation from your side. We appreciate. And by your presentation, we came to know the factual position of clinical trials in Sharjah. So as you mentioned that there is not a single clinical research unit on clinical trials in Sharjah. So what I see that mostly your collaboration with European countries, would it be possible that Sharjah and the clinical centers approved by Integrated Pakistan, that is ICCPS, HEJ Karachi, Aga Khan Hospital, Karachi, Al Maroof Hospital, Islamabad, Shaukat Khanam Hospital, Lahore, and also the Shifa International Hospital, Islamabad. Can you utilize your studies in Pakistan utilizing these approved centers? Would it be possible or not?
Thank you so much. I think this is an excellent point, and that's precisely the purpose of my interaction as well in this important conference. Yes, absolutely, that's the idea. I think the focus also has been for the UAE and Sharjah specifically is to build its own capacity. And I think that's what seems to be highlighted as well. Actually, we are having a meeting on next week with the VC here from University of Sharjah, as well as with Professor Raza Shah, on the possibility and finding out that how we can take advantage of the expertise which are available in Pakistan and how we can help the University of Sharjah and build its capacity in clinical research and clinical trials unit. And let me just also mention that it's not that we are not doing any clinical research, we are, but it's fragmented, and the actual dedicated clinical trials unit facility is what's lacking. And that's what we're trying to build, and that's where the investment and the opportunities exist. So yes, absolutely, and that's what I'm trying to do. And being from Pakistan, it's very important for me that there's so much expertise available, and it's been great that they've been utilized so effectively that we can collaborate in the coming months.
Thank you.
Do we have a question from our audience present virtually, or anyone present in the auditorium? Do we have any question? Yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Dear sir, thank you so much for this interesting data. I would just like to know regarding one of your slides where you have shown brain lysates. So could it be that there would be some products of microglial-like cells that would be producing these effects? And in case if you isolate these substances, then most probably these would be peptides or biological products. So they will be offering some difficulty in transforming these products into effective pharmaceutical products.
Yes, a very, very good question, actually. So the nature of the molecule that we are finding coming from this brain or other, that's a very, very important question. Yeah, you're right that we were also actually puzzled that why we are seeing things in the brain and, microglial cells or other cells may be producing them. I think it's important to highlight, and I found it difficult because this work was funded by the Ministry of Defense in the UK. And so they asked us the same question that, we told them that we're going to find some antibacterial peptide in the blood or hemolymph for these insects. And why are you finding it in the brain? So the way that we explained was that, the brain is the most important part for any species. When not you, but me, when I chase a lizard at home, it will lose its tail and run away. Or when you see a grasshopper and it will lose its hind leg and still able to live. It's the brain part that has to be protected at all cost, because if the brain dies, then the host species will die with it. So for many of these species, it's the brain that has to be protected. But you're right that we do not know that whether this molecule is derived from the brain cells or glial cells or neurons or something else, right? From the nervous system, or whether it is produced by the gut microbiome and then being available in the brain to defend the brain against these nasty pathogens and so on. So we don't know where this molecule is coming from. The only thing we do know that this molecule, some antibacterial, very powerful molecule are present in the brain, and we know their identity. So once we know the identity, that's where we work very closely with many of the colleagues that we can synthesize them in the lab to bring it to a pharmacy. So like any antibiotic, be that from penicillin or be that from any other antimicrobial from natural product, we don't anticipate that we are going to only go back to the source. And this question also was raised to me by BBC as well, that what do you promote? Are you saying that we should have a cockroach farm to be able to produce antibiotic? No, that's not what we're trying to say. Once we identify the molecule, once we know the molecular structure, then we have to then synthesize these molecules in the lab because they're fairly small and we can do that. And once we can synthesize in large amount, then we can bring to a market. Just for your knowledge, by the way, there's not a single antibiotic which has been derived from invertebrates or insects. So our hope is that this could be the first antibiotic of its kind that can come to a pharmacy. Because most of the antibiotics, they normally come from soil bacteria or yeast and so on. So from insects or other animals, there is none. So this could be, so it's an interesting area of research which ought to be explored, because there are so many species in these challenging environments in countries like Pakistan that we like vultures or crows. Maybe it's the gut microbiome that is producing these molecules. And there is such fascinating research actually to reverse aging using gut microbiome, that you can reverse aging effects as well. So we feel that it's a gut microbiome of many of these challenging species living in challenging environment that we can use for our benefit. That's what we are, and using expertise available in different chemistry departments. I hope that partly answers your question.
Thank you very much, sir. With this, I would like to thank all our speakers for this training program. And with this talk, we come to end of our technical session. And now I would request Professor Dr. Syed Khurshid Hasnan, Advisor Comstech, for his concluding remarks.
Honorable guests, speakers, and the audience listening to us virtually. It's my privilege to make these few comments on behalf of our Coordinator General, who has unfortunately had to leave for Karachi, ICCBS, for his office. I think we've had a very successful activity in line with the efforts that have been made by Comstech over the past, since the onset of COVID, to try and provide a platform not only for our national efforts towards providing indigenous local solutions to the problems, including, of course, the very crucial issue discussed here of the clinical trials. And so we've had a number of such webinars and seminars and trainings. And this one in particular, I'm sure, would be very helpful, not only for local audience, but for those who participated from outside Pakistan. It's my pleasure to thank all those who contributed in this activity. In particular, thanks to the DRAP, without whose help and whose cooperation this could not have been possible. And of course, the ICCBS in Karachi, who are our partners in all these activities. Special thanks to them. To the NIH, the DG was kind enough to be here, and I think he made some important observations which would be very exciting for us, particularly about vaccine development and the plans to establish a specialized center for vaccine development in Pakistan. I think that's a very urgent need, a very urgent call for Pakistan, a country of 210 million, to must have its own capacity for vaccine development. And of course, we know that within the Islamic world also there is a very great and severe shortage of this important facility. We do have a vaccine development group centered in Indonesia, who is the leading country at least in the OIC with regard to vaccine development. And they also have the United Nations approval for export of certain of their products. And let me tell you that we are about to have the second OIC Science and Technology Summit. Of course, it's going to be virtual given the circumstances. It will be held in a couple of weeks. And one of the themes that Comstech is very vigorously going to be pursuing and trying to convince our other partners, the leaders of the countries, is that they have to invest very strongly in not only in vaccine development, but in the whole area of this virology and epidemiology, in the sense that this is not the last of the pandemics that the world probably will encounter. So we will definitely carry the message from this meeting, and we are looking forward, as discussed, to, as in fact is our mandate as Comstech, to establish collaborations, partnerships between the various scientific organizations and individuals of the OIC countries. And I think if this workshop is able to add even a little bit to that effort that Comstech is making, it would be indeed a very great success. So in the end, let me just thank once again, one by one, all those who have contributed with their speeches and their comments. Mr. Asim Rauf, the CEO of the Drug Regulatory Authority, as Major General Amir Ikram, who's left. Thank you very much to him. Dr. Abdul Rashid, the Director, Division of Pharmacy Sciences, Pharmacy Services, with Radha Shah of the ICCBS, and our speakers from abroad, Professor Dr. Abdul Bari Al-His and Professor Dr. Naveed Khan. I'm not sure if Dr. Saifur Rahman Khatak has spoken or not. Okay. Thanks to all of them for their valuable contributions and the information that they have provided. And last but not the least, let's all of us thank Ms. Khazima Mausam of Comstech, who has been, of course, the driving force, organizing force behind all the actions in this activity. And so, particularly, Ms. Radha Shah, Ms. Abdul Rashid, and Ms. Khazima Mausam, thank you very much for your role as the focal persons of this activity. I thank all of you sincerely. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. With this, we come to conclude end of this training program today. And you all the participants can collect their certificate from the registration desk, and the virtual participants will receive their e-certificates through email within the span of 10 days. Thank you very much for joining us.